Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us virtually at Pier 17, here behind me in San Francisco. I'm Joy Deutscher. I'm the CEO of Swissnex San Francisco, which is the innovation outpost of Switzerland in the Bay Area. And just like most organizations, we too have pivoted to holding our events that usually take place in our huge space on the waterfront, to experimenting with public conversations on different digital channels. And what we love about this is the fact that people can join us from anywhere. We're suddenly not tied to our audiences and communities that are on site in the Bay Area. So I hope you guys are joining us from all around. These new formats of interaction and engagement, they trigger lots of really big questions, not just how we will gather in the future, but really more generally, how will we live and work tomorrow and beyond? And it is under this sort of guiding question that Vitra and Swissnex San Francisco partnered up to explore the questions of the future of work and rethink our very own workspace environment at Swissnex on Pier 17 in a collaborative project where we also brought on board ZHDK, the Zurich University of the Arts, to actually bring some of the thoughts and ideas that we explore through a series of design dialogues in these kinds of formats and bring those to life in our space. And I have to apologize, there's background noise because I have a zoo of little children, and this is part of the new work environment. So Vitra, as many of you for sure know, is pushing the boundaries of the design discipline since 80 years, and is also our partner in crime when it comes to rethinking the Living Lab here in San Francisco at Pier 17. And with this webcast, we start live streaming a monthly digital series on the topic of future at work, hosted by Vitra's Future of Work Trendscout, Raphael Gielgen. And will feature a cast of high-level, multi-disciplinary foresight thinkers in the space. And these interactive discussions will offer insights into the concept that Raphael has built throughout his career, visiting more than 100 companies a year, these days probably mostly virtually, until the pandemic hit the office world. So we'll hear more about that for sure. And so today we have the special honor to kick the series off with Yves Béhar, the Swiss design icon in the Bay Area and a long time friend of Swissnex. And we couldn't wish for a better sparring partner to launch the series. I just want to raise your attention to the next session, so please mark your calendars, which is planned with Claude Zellweger, design director at Google, on October 15th. So please mark your calendar and you'll hear more about that. But now with no further ado, I'm happy to give the virtual stage to Raphael. Raphael, please take it away. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. So also welcome from my side. For me, it's a premiere because normally I'm this kind of person who is interviewed or give the talks, and now I change. I want to be a moderator and hopefully a good one today. So I'm in Frankfurt today in our showroom. I broadcast from here. And as you could mention in the past, I travel more than 25 countries a year from Asia to the US, from the Northern Europe to the South. But that's over now for a period. But there's a great opportunity to, in a monthly period, to think about what is ahead of us. So what we want to do is we really want to talk and discuss and think about a preferred future. So what is a preferred future? What we would love to have in maybe 5 or 10 years from now. So to give a kind of polar star, and there are always 3 fields: how we want to work, how we want to lead, and also space. Yeah, and you heard about our first guest, Yves. So it is quite difficult to introduce him. But what I highly recommend after this session, don't go to Netflix, go to Google and check all the videos from Yves. I've done that, and that is fantastic. So in my introduction, Yves is a teacher. Yves is a surfer, is a snowboarder, is a designer, he's a maker, he's a former punk, he's a bright mind. And what he really is, he's a person which empowers the other one to go beyond and to think different, and to bring design into a broader perspective into life. So welcome, Yves.
Thank you, Raphael, for the very nice introduction, and I'm happy to be here. And as Joya said, it's always fun to do things with Swissnex and to have some really in-depth discussion there. So I'm looking forward to it.
So Yves, Swiss born, San Francisco based, where are you now?
Now I'm in Lisbon in Portugal. We've been here for 2.5 months, and yeah, I'm enjoying a little bit of time in Europe while working remotely with my team in San Francisco, with clients and partners really all over the world.
So let us give a little bit of kind of insight or your thoughts. What are you, if you make a recap about the last 25 weeks, what kind of learnings or what kind of special moments you had where you say, oh my God, I never thought about that?
Oh, so many. I think it's been a discovery for everybody. I think we've all been thrown into this completely by surprise, and we've all had to adapt to this new condition. Our offices, our home lives, our kids and education, transportation, travel. I can't think of a single thing that hasn't fundamentally changed in the last 6 months. I think initially for me, the pause was something that I enjoyed because being with my kids, being with family, was really good. And then progressively, a sense of empowerment started to happen when we started to work on COVID response projects, when we started to continue on, on regular projects, with our clients. And so a sense of empowerment about, how much change we can really enact, and how, the world really has adapted in a very big way. And so I think there's real sort of power and sort of beauty in the way that I think the whole world has adapted, I think, fairly well to what initially seemed like an impossible situation. When quarantine first came on, everybody said, well, it's going to be 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. And it's been 6 months, right? If we had been told mid-March that we'll still be doing this in late September, I don't think we would have been able to deal with it.
Yeah. Another question. You as a designer, you're always ahead, you're always in the future. So it is much more easier for you to deal with this situation, like your neighbors, your friends, or are your friends calling you, hey, Yves, what should I do? Give me a recommendation, give me direction.
I think everybody has had to be creative. Yes, I'm here. Can you see me? Can you see me okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. I think everybody has had to be, everyone has had to be creative. Everyone has had to adapt. And I think, it's not just as a designer, but, if you ask, has it been easier? I can see that with my team, adapting to remote working, adapting to, doing brainstorms remotely, to collaborating across continents, across disciplines. That's certainly something that we have done for years. So purely from a work standpoint, from a design standpoint, I think we are lucky to be in a profession that is already tends to work across, both geographies and use technology to do that.
And so let us go a little bit in our topic. So if we talk about preferred future in the context, how we work, what do you believe? So how we will work in 5 years from now, or how will we work in 10 years from now? What are the things, what are the strongest drivers of change, and what could be an impact for us?
Well, I think what we have seen is the acceleration of the tools and the I think the work styles that we will see, that we have been talking about, that, in terms of trend reports and sort of future casting. We've talked about, remote work. We've talked about work location flexibility. for a very long time. But this has been an accelerant. You know, it's like pouring gasoline on the issue, and it's led to, I think, many advancement in terms of software, in terms of people getting used to that. So the way I see, I see the future is very much as a hybrid of in-person, but also a hybrid of accommodating more, accommodating for people's, life needs, and whether it's living in a different place than they work, or living in a place that economically is more viable, for example, than being in San Francisco, New York. I think we have been doing this a little bit at Fuse Project. We've had people who lived in Portland and who lived in Europe and who lived in Philadelphia, continue to be our, core employees, even though they were not local. It's been happening for a few years, but I think now we can see that flexibility on the part of the employer is going to be absolutely key. It's going to be the new kind of policy, where there was rigidity around, how you work, when you work, where you work from. I think flexibility is going to be the new modus operandi.
There's another point what is really interesting out of design perspective. We make recently a study about, we name it Mapping the Remote Universe, and we count more than 700 remote work tools. I was just shocked that there many tools are existing. How do you believe, how could we design the intersection between the physical and the virtual world? So it's like, do we have holodecks then, or how could it be?
What do you mean the Rolodexes?
So I mean, maybe you are in your studio in San Francisco, and then you work with a partner, with a customer, and he's somewhere. And do we have another experience in 5 years from now talking to him like that he's presented in a holodeck or maybe in bigger screen?
Yeah, I think there's been an acceleration of the software tools. I think Zoom was sort of luckily positioned in the right place to make it easy. But I do think there will be, the tools are going to be much more seriously developed in terms of being portable, in terms of giving you a more in-person view or in-person sense, of being together or brainstorming together. For example, we've added tools like sketchboards. So now we are having a lot of brainstorms and a lot of client presentations where, they can put notes or mark or vote or do things like we would do in person, but they can do it on what is called a Miro board, which is off the side of your Zoom screen. But the acceleration of new software tools will be significant. And is it VR? Is it AR? Is it is it a combination of the two that requires goggles or maybe no goggles? I think we will see a very fast acceleration of these methods of working.
Yeah. So let us come to the next point. Now we discussed about how we work. I believe it is a little bit like the black hole, like with a strong gravity change a lot. How that influence, or what is the impact on how we lead? What that means for leaders? How they organize or orchestrate their teams? What do you think?
I think in a way, it requires the kind of leadership that puts more trust in your employees. So less sort of direct leadership, very sort of formal or formatted leadership, and a lot more trust into your employees, because now they're working, again, remotely from home, maybe in different time zones. Maybe they have different circumstances around them. They're maybe taking care of children or taking care of an elderly, family member. And, it requires, essentially trusting that the people, are around doing the work and are capable of staying engaged even though they're, you know, you're not there to kind of see who is in the office and who isn't, or who's doing what and not. And so I think it continues a trend which was about horizontal organizations where it was where it's less top down, and it adds a lot more requirement of trust in that leadership.
Do you believe there are less barriers in hierarchy then, and between I would say me and my boss, for example?
I think it's in a way, yes. I mean, I do think that, you know, finding a meeting time, you know, with your boss in a crowded office is, you know, can be quite challenging. I mean, we actually designed some office systems that really sort of promote, you know, a fast-paced way to meet and engage and communicate, you know, not just formal meetings that are like 1 hour long or 30 minutes long. And I think, you know, I think encouraging that now virtually is something that is needed. So people have your phone number, they can set up a quick catch up with you. In a way, it's less formal. I think less formality. You know, we can see your kids, your cat, your life around you. You know, where you live, how you live. You know, around you, and that less formality that happens, that comes out of that, also means more humanity in some ways, meaning you actually feel closer to some of my employees because I know more, I see more of them in a personal setting.
I had a lot of conversation during my research, and often people compare gaming with a new kind of leadership, where you have the game master and where you have the squads. And
yep.
Could you think in the future we have like a scope of work master, and when I wake up, I have kind of a dashboard where I can pick up the best jobs I want to have, and I could do my work? Could that be possible?
Well, I think people always want to work on what they're passionate about, and I think companies today are you know, when you're an employee, when you're a worker, you tend to be a lot less interested in the company and a lot more interested in the project. You know, what project within this larger company are you joining? You know, what are you part of? Because you know, people want to do something that they believe in. They want to work on something they believe in. So I think businesses have to be a lot more organized around projects that can catalyze, energize, recruit, you know, members of the team within the organization, inside or outside, who will pursue passionately, you know, these endeavors. So it becomes less about joining the company and more about joining the project, which in terms of leadership means that you have to really be sensible to, you know, people's capabilities and people's desires, and put that together, hopefully, into the right, you know, team or project that they can belong to.
Interesting perspective. To all of you, the audience, by the way, welcome to all of these ones who was a little bit late. The chat is also open to you to address questions in around 10 minutes. We will open the chat then for your questions, or just leave your questions in the chat and I will take care of that. So, so we talk about how we work, we talk about what that means for leadership. What do you think currently space is it's really, so the office has a hard time now during the lockdown phase because people are not allowed in the most of the areas in the world to go back, or less person. So what do you think? What is the meaning of space in 5 or 10 years from now?
So it's interesting, I'm changing the background picture here since we're talking about office spaces. This is an office space that for a company that I'm a co-founder in, which is a co-working space. And what we've discovered through the last, you know, 3+ years of building these co-working spaces is what space means is community. What space means is whether everybody works for the same business or whether they work for different businesses. They want to join a community that they feel close to, akin to. And I think that is what people are looking for, and space will be more and more specific in a way. You know, this is a very specific environment you see behind me. There's sort of lounging and social environments. There's also a lot of private, private spaces that people can go, focus on. But I think the mixture of focus space and social space that encourage collaboration is going to be, one element, which is a little bit more of the physical element. And the other element is the programmation of the community. What are the things in there that interest this group, and that they will come together to do both, while they work, but also outside of the work itself. So for example, the programming at Canopy, it's we have 4 spaces in San Francisco in the Bay Area, the co-working spaces I mentioned. The programming is incredible. Like 3 times a week, there are people, talking, presenting, panels around subjects that are interesting to people now, whether it's technology all the way to women founders and social challenges.
Okay, so you bring this interesting perspective to combine. On one hand, you have the space layer, and then you name it the programming. So yeah, and your case, what you mentioned before, what you have designed is an ideal case. So it's a really good case. What do we do with this kind of towers in all the cities, in the major cities?
I think in many ways they will be occupied in similar ways that they're today, but again with maybe less density. I think in the last 15 years or so, there was a big drive into density, into putting more people in smaller spaces. And I think the accent will be less about what is the work that happens here, rather than what is the community that's coming here. So it will be more based on group activities, again, cultural, social, and business discussions that take place, and less about the day-to-day work, where the work gets done. And so it's a shift, which I think will actually make the office environment more friendly, more welcoming, more a bit warmer, because if it's based on the community rather than how many desks you can put there inside, I think it changes the environment somewhat.
So another point is in 10 years from now, the average age of the workforce, the white collar, is less than 30 years. So if you go on Twitch TV today and you see the amount of gamer, and if you see the quality of virtual spaces, and when I think, oh my God, they spend so many time in these virtual spaces and that good quality, has the physical space even compete to the virtual space in terms of design and beauty?
Yeah, I think the gaming environment is a lot about teamwork. The way people come together, they have a goal, they have a target, and they achieve it, as a team. The rewards are clear, the goals are clear. There's a lot less politics in the gaming environment than there is in the office environment, and I think that's why young people, especially teens, enjoy that quite a bit, because it feels like you are on a mission together to do something, to achieve something. In terms of those spaces tend to be very thematic, around the game itself. I haven't seen a lot of what I would call kind of restful, tasteful environment within the gaming space. But I'm sure those, will also be built. Having the right environment for the work that is inspiring when it's virtual work isn't something that we see today. You know, people are switching backgrounds like what I'm doing now, but it's not, we're not all coming together in a space that imbues the right spirit and values, virtual space that imbues these values to be sort of inspiring and to put us all on the same page, which is what a physical space does. A physical space is really the expression of values and taste and the mission of the company in some ways. So so how do we create, I think that's a great question, and I think that's a great design problem. How do we create virtual spaces that energize and bring people together in the same way that physical space can?
Wow, I love this perspective, something new on my dashboard. So another question. You are now more than 20 years in the Bay Area, yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned one of your video talks that this kind of attitude or approach, I name it this beta state of mind, it's now all over the world. But what happens now is why change is so, how to say, the interval of change into old businesses, ordinary businesses, is there. Yeah. And for me, it's like we will never left our beta state of mind in the next, I don't know, 5 years, 8, maybe 10. How could space give an answer to that? How could we create?
I think
this change?
I think that is key. I think space is an element of change. It's a very palpable, physical one that is absolutely needed, and it's very hard to make change happen when the environment doesn't change. For example, you know, we talked about horizontal office versus vertical. Offices that are, you know, very hierarchical and that have a vertical strategy. If you continue to have a lot of private offices with, you know, the bosses having a suite, you know, like a couch with a coffee table, and the employees are just have a desk with a chair, you continue to really express this notion of hierarchy, and you're not encouraging really sort of this peer-to-peer dialogue based on ideas and not based on who's the boss. I think, you know, the space has to change to accommodate the cultural, you know, transformation of your business. And so, you know, more than ever, whether it's virtual or physical space, I think it will need to sort of follow that idea of matching, you know, the environment, the design of the environment, the space itself, with the new philosophy that you're embedding into the company.
Yeah. By the way, we get an interesting quote from Gian Pablo. Fortnite Battle Royale is an interesting casual space for people to meet. So thank you, Pablo, for that. And another question to that topic: do you have any space in mind where you say, Rafa, this is for me like the perfect kind of beta space, what I haven't seen?
You know, it's in some ways, I mean, the spaces that people really like to come to, where they really enjoy both socializing and working, are coffee spaces, right? Your morning routine, going to the coffee shop down the street. A lot of small, independent, nice coffee shops in every, you know, city of any size today is the new gathering space, and it. You know, they tend, I mean, I'm here in Lisbon, they tend to be very tastefully designed. So, you know, they tend to be in beautiful sort of buildings that sort of feel solid, that don't feel like a franchise. And they tend to have personality because the staff that works there, you know, the person, you know, roasting the coffee, etc., has that personality as well. And so I think in some ways, you know, hospitality is really what office design should be and should become. You know, much more about hosting your employees, bringing people together, allowing them to share, to share these times in a way that is meaningful, not in a way that is about, again, pleasing the boss or hiding from, from them.
Yeah. So let us talk about another point, how the new could come into the life of organization. You are, how to say, you have a great career. You also work as a teacher and you make so many experience. And I think out of your heart, you're kind of a creator and a rebel. So should we have in organizations more creators and rebels instead of managers?
Yeah, I think organizations are built around the notion of efficiency, from getting from A to B, and managers, MBAs, and others tend to have that responsibility. And at fuseproject, the company I founded 20 years ago, my design agency, I immediately identified that we needed a different kind of structure, because the issue with people with a skill, creative skill, a technical skill, becoming managers, is that they're not always the greatest managers. They're not always the greatest. It's not always where their passion is. And so you take people like designers or creatives or engineers and others, and you promote them to essentially get out of the business that they love to do, to get out of the business that got them into design or engineering school or a creative school to start with. And I find that I've seen, in my previous career when I used to work for other people, I've seen really sort of those creative minds, those people that were true leaders of their fields, kind of slowly shrivel up, slowly, become, introverted, less happy in that managerial position. And so at fuseproject, we have two tracks. We have a specialist track, which is a designer that continues to be a design leader, and that is given really the authority to make decisions, to lead, to guide, to mentor. And then we have managers, but they're always equals, meaning the manager isn't a superior to the designer. Quite often, actually, the designer has more experience than the manager in terms of years on the business of what they've seen. But by making them equal in a project, one of them owns the creative relationship, the other one owns more of the business relationship, and of course they partner together, on the project. So one big question has always been for me: how do you reward, technical or creative skills? How do they continue to grow, have position of authority and leadership, while not turning them into managers? And so this is something that I believe we've succeeded at fuseproject. We have people who started as designers who have been, with us for 15 years, 12 years, 14 years. We have quite a few of them.
So from the leaders to the employees, so what do you believe are the human qualities that make people essential in the future of work? Because we had also questions in the chat about the impact of AI, robotics, and all these things are going on.
What do you mean by robotics? I mean, how do they come into play here?
The question was human qualities, and then competing against, acting together with AI and cobots.
Sure. So we've done a lot of work on robots. Surprisingly, this is the kind of projects that started to come to fuseproject about, I would say, almost 10 years ago. And it led me to develop a set of principles around designing for the smart home, designing for robots and AI. And I think it creates a different type of approach in a way to design, because we have to design with other ethical concerns in mind. And one of them is that robots should always be a way for humans and robots to partner together rather than compete. And so one of our principles is that robots should always complement the human ability rather than replace it. And so, you know, and the other strong belief that I have is most of the technology we use today really addresses the comfortable middle of life. You know, they're gadgets, they're fun things to have and to use. But really where technology makes the biggest difference in people's lives is when it addresses the needs at the extremes of life, you know, as we are, you know, as we get older, as we are sick, as we have, as we are young, for babies and parents, for example. And so a lot of the robots that we have designed really make a tremendous difference in people's lives at the extremes of lives rather than at the comfortable middle part of life.
Good point. So currently there are two companies will open, I think, in the next 2 years, their headquarters with a amount of robots inside. One is the Toyota Woven City, announced by Akio Toyota this year, and English is the architect. And the other one is the headquarters from DJI in Shenzhen, done by Forster, where even the drones are going between these two towers. We will see what brings that in. I have another topic regarding to look into the future. We are entering an increasing healthy lifespan. So in the near time, multi-generation will work together. And I believe that the difficult is like, I'm now 50, so I'm old. And I grown up in a linear world driven by processes, inductive thinking, deductive thinking, no abductive thinking. So how could we match that four generations could work together inside one organization to get an inequality and also a multi-generation company?
No, I think it's absolutely critical. I don't think you can do good work, good creative work, make good products, again, whether they're software, hardware, or services, without a much wider spectrum of inputs. And that spectrum of input is age, different age, different generations. That input is different backgrounds, different race, different sort of cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds. I think it's absolutely essential. So, you know, at fuseproject, not only we've always been multidisciplinary, but we've also been very, very international. And actually, you know, I think we're about 20 different or 25 different languages spoken and 20 different nationalities. And it's, you know, it really is very important when you work on these critical new projects and initiatives to have that, you know, variety of opinion and inputs. And I think this is something that needs to be consciously built into the culture of a company, consciously constantly sort of promoted and supported, because, you know, the old world of seeing a bunch of, you know, middle-aged to, you know, pre-retirement, you know, white guys as the leadership of a company, that isn't going to help you connect with the consumer. It's not going to help you create great products either. So that diversity is absolutely key.
Yeah, I want to go to a question in the chat from Robert. So sure. What do you think, what are the strongest points for recruitment and retention of people in the future? So why people choose a company, choose fuseproject or company, or it is more the job, it is a brand, it is a purpose? What could it be? What do you think?
I really think that the reason people choose a company is essentially for two reasons. One, that they feel they will bring their skills, that they will be challenged, that they will learn, that they will get mentored, but that they're very additive and complementary from a skill standpoint. and that, you know, they admire or they are excited about what the company is going to work on. So the project. So it's how I fit, what I bring, and what am I going to be able to do and work on and learn. I think the third element is the culture. I want to join a company with a culture that I can relate to, with people who share, you know, the same values, that are going to be a good match for me, that are going to be that is going to be a friendly, supportive place for me to work. And so I think that's how you recruit people, is by having a great culture and having great projects that they're stimulated to join. And, you know, I think now trust, you know, I want to join a company that will trust me, where I will be able to accommodate my own beliefs, my own perspective, my own way of working. It's less about me adapting and kind of reducing myself to, you know, to the culture of the company. It's more about the company welcoming that other perspective.
You bring in two great points. One is about the skills, the other about the culture. By the way, in the culture point, there was a great issue about the Harvard Business Review 2018. It's called The Culture Factor. If people are interested, Google it. Great article about cultural frameworks. I want to come to the point with the skills. So if we are in a kind of permanent beta mindset, how could we do best and upskilling people? To give you an idea out of my perspective of the question. So in the past, work was invisible. People were sitting in front of the machine the entire day, and you have no idea what the neighbor is doing. So how could you learn from the team? So what can we do in the future to reskill and to upskill and to prepare the workforce for the next kind of jobs ahead of us?
You know, what I have seen is that the business has to have a desire to constantly adapt. So if the business is adapting, if the business is open to new challenges and to responding to those challenges, then the people within the company are learning about how to do these new, you know, how to bring their abilities and how to learn new skills. So this idea is that you constantly retrain yourself, you constantly build on top of what you had before, and you never really take the static idea that, you know, what we did last year is what we will do next year. Things will continue to change. I mean, I felt when I was a young designer, there were many things I didn't know, but I would never shy away from a new challenge because I believe that the team and myself can adapt to that new challenge. So somebody would come through the door and would say, well, have you ever done this? I would be like, no, but based on all the variety and the diversity, of the projects we have done, clearly we should be able to adapt to this other problem and challenge. And it's nobody wants to do the same thing in a career for 20, 25 years. You had a question about retention before. A good way to retain people is for them to feel like there's going to be something new, something different around the corner that they will be able to participate to. So that job they had when they joined 5 years ago, 10 years ago is quite different, and how they apply themselves is quite different a few years later.
So now we want to step in maybe one of your topics where I believe you're really, really good in that, the sustainable agenda. Since, by the way, the question is coming from Benedict Wexler, the Swiss consul. So in this topic, work, or future of work, what do you believe, which parts are these one who have the strong, which are stronger, where is the strongest impact by the sustainable or by the green agenda, name it like you want?
Yeah. So, I've worked on sustainability projects. I worked with Bill McDonough as a co-founder of the Cradle to Cradle Institute. I've worked on this for 20 years. And what's very interesting about sustainability is that it is very, very different depending on what industry you're in. It isn't just like sort of business efficiency, ISO 900 or 9000 type of principle that can be pretty much applied to any business in very similar ways. Sustainability is entirely different, whether you're in the packaged goods industry, whether you're in the furniture industry, whether you're in food, whether you're in the service business. What you have to do is generally invent how your company, your product, your service will become sustainable. It isn't something you can just say, we'll do the same thing as, our colleagues that are doing, that are in a different industry or in a different space. And so it's very challenging. It's very creative, and it really requires a top-down vision to apply and to transform, your company from a sustainability standpoint. But when I've seen it happen successfully is when the whole company feels very enthusiastic and very enabled to make change, and when that change is supported from the top.
There is an interesting question. I'm also interested in that by Anne. Who is your role model, Yves? Or maybe you have several role models.
When I was a young designer, I really had a lot of affinity for the Charles and Ray Eames studio, which was based in Venice Beach in Los Angeles, and the reason for that is it was a time when design was very specialized. You're either a graphic designer, you're a filmmaker, you're a furniture designer, you do exhibit design, you do architecture. And they really brought this notion of the studio model that really can address with creativity such a wide array of what would be typically considered specialties. And that became a little bit of my mantra early on, which is, actually that being multifaceted as a business and being diversified is very much our personality. So we can work on brands, we can work on packaging, we can work on the product, the experience, and to go back to the sustainability question as well. That is actually a great way to bring notions of sustainability into a brand, because you can't just bring it from one side. It really has to come from all the different angles. If you want to signify change and transformation, all the different facets of your business have to have that approach. And so being multidisciplinary as we are, I think we're able to enact and bring bigger change to the partners and clients that we have.
So in one of your talks, while you talked about Eames Nelson, in one of your talks, you talk about Eames Nelson, I believe Girard. So what do you think, if they would live today, what would these guys do today? Where would they live? Would they go to Shenzhen? Would they stay in the Bay Area? Or what would they do?
I think, most designers I really look up to, they've tended to bring change where they like to live, whether it was Chicago or LA or California, but really sort of be citizens of the world at the same time. I think all of the great folks you mentioned would be going a little stir crazy right now during COVID, not being able to travel, because whether it's Charles and Ray Eames, or Alexander Girard and others, they were big travelers, and they believed in this idea of cross-pollination between cultures. and influence. You know, I think that's, I think most designers that I know of, both historical and present, tend to be borderless, tend to be very comfortable crossing borders, crossing cultures, and collaborating with people around the world. So my sense is they would be doing, you know, they would be collaborating across fields and across the world, as a lot of designers today are doing.
Yeah. I have another question from a young designer, Pedro from Spain. So he asked, like, if you tried frequently remote work tools like Oculus Rift, and what do you think, how they affect, like, augmented virtual reality, the future of work?
So we used virtual reality quite a bit in the past, especially when we worked on environments and architecture. And I think it's even more useful now because you're not able to sort of show these intricate models or these maquettes in that type of work where people are like imagining being inside of the mock-up and inside of the space. And so it's very useful. I wouldn't say for finished work, for detailed work, for material work, but mostly for, you know, for the experience of the space itself, for the experience of the environment. You know, to me, that is the most, that's where virtual tools are most useful.
Okay, I want to come to the end. So is there anything what you want to recommend, to advise, to share with the audience where you believe that could be really helpful or valuable for us?
Well, there's a project we launched recently, which I've put here in the backgrounds. I need to move this way if you want to see it a little bit, which is with Fabien Cousteau. It's a project about the exploring the oceans. It's very much based on the idea of the space station, but underwater, for research of our oceans, both in terms of global warming, sustainability, but also food security and medical research. And you know, I think more and more, you know, the projects that I love are not projects that come from somebody who is technical, somebody who has an engineering lab, somebody who is a technologist. Most of the projects that I work on today that I think are incredible come from a humanist, somebody who simply sees technology as a tool to build and solve you know, bigger problems. That is the case, for example, of a project that I'm very proud of, that I've worked on for now many years, which is the Happiest Baby SNU. And you know, this is a view of here, I'm right in between of the SNU, but it's a project that really has changed the parental experience of the first 6 months of having a baby by providing, you know, a better sleep environment. It's a robot that actually starts to move and make sounds and keeps your baby asleep a little bit longer, or helps him or her fall asleep, you know, in those long feeding nights that parents have. But, you know, Dr. Harvey Karp is, he's not a technologist. He's a 60-plus-year-old pediatrician who has had an incredible method on how to calm babies and how to help them sleep, and who is mostly concerned about the health of the parents, and how lack of sleep and, you know, creates all kinds of other, you know, problems with depression, divorce, etc. And so these projects that I think are making a huge difference in the world really come from people who have genuine concerns, but also genuine, you know, sort of professional expertise in how to solve them. And they happen to solve some of these problems with technology and design and experience, of course.
Thank you. So it was a great conversation. to all of you in the audience. So first, I want to say thank you that you stay so long. Second, you will get a graphic recording about the entire session. All of you have registered. Third, any feedback is welcome. If you would leave a feedback in the chat, that help all of us to become better. And now I want to hand over to the MC, to our host, Joya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raphael. Thank you, Yves, for this really inspiring kickoff of this series, Future at Work Design Dialogues for 2030. I personally take along so many little sort of sound bites of what you were talking about, but the workspace is a place that will really become all about community, much more so than necessarily efficiency or productivity. And not just the workplace, actually the office and work as a whole. Also the idea that space will more and more take the role of an environment for engagement, for connection, human connection, for some level of serendipity. I mean, this is what we have worked towards in our space at Pier 17 very actively. But that also raises the next question, which is how do we create spaces that energize people like physical spaces in the online world? And if any of you can address that challenge and share some of the, tidbits and secret sauce of that with us, this is something we're really actively looking at as well. How do you recreate energetic spaces? How do you recreate connection and serendipity online? This is a really, really big question. And I think that's one that has not been solved as of yet. Another thing I really liked you pointing out, Yves, is I think we're all going through change. Every organization right now is really going, stripped down to the core. What are we about? Why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? What are we doing? You talked about sustainability. I think that's hopefully at the forefront for any of us, for any organization at the moment, for any company. But, the importance of the space having to reflect the change. You can't actually grow into change culturally unless your space kind of reflects that as the environment. So I think that was another really interesting soundbite that I keep with me. And another last thing, Raphael, you talked about the permanent beta, right? Are we in a world of permanent beta? And I think we have never felt as much like we're just trying to figure this out as all of us in this very moment. And it is in a way exhausting and in so many ways so inspiring and energizing because it's full of possibility. And I think that's something that we heard coming out of that conversation as well. So a big, big thank you to both of you. And just a reminder, our next Design Dialogue 2030 is on October 15th, again with Raphael and then with Claude Zellweger, Design Director at Google. And we're really excited for that. And we hope all of you and many more can join. So please spread the word. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Raphael. And thank you, Joya.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. We will. Thank you. Bye-bye.